G'day, I'm the Sick Bird, and this channel is a companion channel to my other channel called Signocism, which is where I will publish, or have published, depending on when you're watching this, the films I'm making about science, about graphic art, telling stories about people, places and myths through the lens of graphic art. Basically, it's like a foodie vlog, except, instead of going to the area and sampling the food and drink, I'm walking down the street and looking at the graphic art. But here on signocism-tek, I'm concentrating on the tech side of things. That's the gear I'm using, the issues I'm encountering, the decisions I'm making as I make those films. And hopefully that will be useful for other people who are in a beginning situation like me, who really need perhaps some clarity and insight and can benefit from other beginners' experience rather than advertising. So, because that's the kind of research that I found the most useful, is listening to other people to talk about their experience. And I just pick up on little gems of knowledge and little things that people will mention, and it'll set me off on a down a wormhole to find out something that I have no idea about, that I had no idea was a factor. So it's going to be a very long video. Most of these videos will be very long because I'm going to talk in some detail about what I have to say. Now, although I say I'm a beginner, I'm not a rank beginner. I do have a background of interest and practice in filmmaking related stuff. So when I was younger, I studied photography for a while. I've studied film analysis and communications and media. I've written some books and some screenplays. I do a lot of visual art. And although I haven't done those things professionally, those things really help to inform me as I go on to making films. I've taught screenwriting. I've taught art and animation, image analysis, semiotics, narrative stuff, creative writing, creative fiction, non-fiction. I've got a background in that kind of thing. And this is important in one way, because it means that when I envision the films that I want to make, I have a base of knowledge there about how to achieve the things that I want to achieve, how to get the shots I want to get, the gear I'm going to need to do it. Now, I don't know a whole lot, but I do know some. And so it's important for you to go and get that knowledge, especially about camera angles, distance, and basic setups for lighting, and basic ideas about aperture, depth of field, and that kind of thing, so that you can, when you are watching other people's films, you can recognize the techniques and therefore copy them if you want to. Copy's the wrong word, isn't it? Model your films on theirs. So, it's about understanding how people are achieving what they're achieving and then learning how to do it yourself. So this video is basically about the camera rig that I've put together and why I've put together what I've put together. So I should begin with a quick description of the films that I'm going to make. So as I said, I'm going to be walking to an area of the city. I'm in Melbourne, Australia. I'm going to be walking down a street. I'll be outdoors. There'll be lots of cars. There'll be lots of shop windows, so lots of reflections. There'll be sun. Sometimes I'll be shooting into the sun. Sometimes I'll be shooting at right angles, other angles to the sun. The sun sometimes will be low in the sky, sometimes it'll be high in the sky. There's no real way around that. So I need some gear that's flexible and adaptable to those kind of situations. I want to use depth of field a lot in order to produce it. And there will be a lot of times when I'm focusing quite close on a shop sign and I want to blur out the background while I'm doing that and get some real good bokeh and some sort of nice visual effects that I can use. Now, if you don't need to do those things, then you don't need necessarily to buy the same kind of gear as me. So what you want to do is be thinking about what do you actually need to achieve what you want. Now, as things evolve, I'll be doing more videos about how these decisions have turned out. Already, I've learned quite a lot. But before we do anything else, I want to give a big shout out to the people who really helped me do the research. There's a ton of stuff on the internet, and there's the really good people really stand out to me. Everybody's pretty much got very good intentions, and a lot of people have great experience to share. So here goes. Here's the list. Good Rebel Creative, Luke Forsyth, Thomas J. McClure, Mark Bennett's Camera Crisis, Mark Weimels, he's also in Melbourne. He's been so useful in an Australian context. The Film Alliance, Sam Holland, Stuart Rodwell, Visionary Studios, Sean de Wispelair, what an amazing name. So cheers to you, because what your content has been super useful to me on this journey so far. So of course the first thing was the camera and lens. So I thought a lot about buying something like a DJI Pocket 3. So it came down to a DJI Pocket 3 versus a small mirrorless camera. And it took me quite a while to make this decision. And I was thinking about what I needed to do. And the DJI Pocket 3 is a fantastic camera in so many ways. It's small, it's light, takes great quality vision, stabilization is great. But there's one thing really it can't do, and that is you can't control your aperture, and you can't get a lot of creative effects using it. Basically what it means, you can't change lenses on the thing. Whereas on a mirrorless camera, there are literally thousands of different lenses available, so that if you have effects, creative things you want to achieve, you can. And so, but the DJI Pocket 3 is going to restrict you in certain ways. It's going to be great for being discreet, especially if you're shooting in public, as I will be. It's great for portability, for travel. If you're a vlogger and you want to walk along, I can't imagine a better option. I mean, having a mirrorless camera there is heavy in comparison, bulky. So it's a great solution for that kind of thing. And if that's all you want to do, that's great. And for most things I want to do, it would in fact be a really good choice. But there's that limitation about lenses. So of course I began by wanting a full frame camera for quality reasons, for image quality reasons. And I set it on a Sony ZV-E1 with a 16 to 35mm compact Sony zoom. Planning also to buy a longer lens for close-ups. And then reality hit. That was going to cost an awful lot of money that I don't have available. So to bring down the cost into as little as possible, it meant balancing my desire for image quality with availability and price. And that meant finding the best bang for the buck. And as my search evolved, that meant bringing the entire rig at under 3,000 Australian dollars. And that's about 1,900 US. And as close to 2,000 Australian, about 1,200 US as possible. So what that meant was looking at APS-C cameras. It's a smaller sensor, but it's going to give me 90% of what I want. And the image quality these days is really, really great. So really, once that decision had been made, the choice of camera became pretty easy. So there's a ton of content about this, comparing things, comparing cameras. So it's sort of never ending. So make sure you do your research and don't buy anything until you're really sure about what you actually want. So I found ChatGPT actually really, really useful for comparing things. And again, I'd enter into a dialogue with ChatGPT. I've developed a relationship and things are going very well. And it would just allow, like a lot of people's videos where they're talking about experience, there are just these gems of wisdom that it throws up, and things I hadn't thought of and weren't aware of, and allowed me to then go down that rabbit hole and go to the end and work things out. Of course, you have to be skeptical about ChatGPT. And because so many of its answers are in fact wrong. If you ask it to correct itself, it will say, yeah, sorry. But ultimately, if you exhaust the possibilities, you'll eventually get to somewhere where it is, in fact, genuine and accurate. So the choice of camera came down to a Sony E10 versus a E10 Mark II. And technically that decision was about 8-bit color versus 10-bit color and IBIS or in-body image stabilization, which the E10 doesn't have, but the Mark II does. So if you don't know what 8-bit and 10-bit color are, go and look that up because it is important. But I looked it up. My conclusion was, for me right now, it doesn't matter so much. I'm quite happy with the 8-bit color. And so it was really then about the in-body image stabilization. Now, I'd already decided that I was going to use a gimbal, which I'll talk about later, for stabilization. And stabilization itself is a must, but do you really want the IBIS system or not? Because it's going to cost you if you want it. And if you don't need it, then there's a great potential to save money. So I decided that a gimbal was going to be enough and that I didn't need IBIS as well. And, so therefore I'm going to save the money on that. So ultimately IBIS wasn't a factor. And 10-bit color wasn't a factor. Stabilization is a factor. So I should just mention some alternatives about that and the things that I discovered. So for stabilization, number one is a gimbal. 2, OSS lenses are available. It's a Sony specific thing called optical steady shot. But the lens that it seemed prudent for me to buy, that I'll talk about in a minute, doesn't have it. And in any case, the OSS on its own doesn't solve stabilization issues. So it's going to need a gimbal anyway. So if I'm getting the gimbal, why do I need the OSS? And I decided, okay, I won't do that. There's also software solutions like Sony's Catalyst Browse. That is post-production work. So it's another stage, part of your editing workflow. The results I've seen can produce a kind of warping effect that I don't want. So whilst I might end up using it, I don't want it to be the primary means for stabilization. So I've decided that the gimbal itself is the best way to get it. And anything else on top of that, any software that I might need, I'll use and I'll see how it goes. But I want to learn how to get good, stable footage to begin with. Surely that's the best option. And a gimbal is a good way to do that. Another option for stabilization is called active steady shot, which the E10 has. If you are making content for YouTube and you plan on making videos where a subject is talking to the camera and you want some of the environments on the background in as we have here, you're going to want a wide angle lens. So active steady shot is going to crop that to make it a tighter frame. And if you're using an APS-C camera, then the frame is already being cropped because you get a frame that's 1.5 times the size of the lens. So at the moment I'm using a 16mm lens, but the frame itself, frame size is actually equivalent to 24mm. So if you're relying on active steady shot for stabilization and you're a vlogger and you've got to hold the camera up and then it's going to crop really tight, then you're not going to get the environment around you. You're just going to get your face and your shoulders. And if that's what you want, that's fine. But I don't want that. I'm going to be walking down the street. I want to see the subject, which is me walking along. And then I want to see the environment that I'm in. I want to see the street. I want to see the shops. I want to see the cars. I want to see the people in the environment to get that feel of the environment. So I need that wide angle. Then there was a consideration of cost. The E10 Mark II is relatively new. I think it's only been out, must be coming up a year, 9 months, something like that. So there's very few available secondhand. And the ones that are available secondhand are expensive. Except for one bloke who tried to scam people with a low price. And I contacted him once, twice. I asked for pictures of the camera he was selling and he just kept on sending me promotional pictures. I said, no, mate, no, I want to see a shot of the actual camera, I want to check the condition of it, he just comes on sending me promotional pics. So if you're looking on Facebook Marketplace in Australia and you come across someone selling a Sony EV10 for about $500, EV10 Mark II, sorry, for about $500, watch out. So the next thing to talk about is a lens. So I wanted a wide angle lens, and so I could shoot the subject within the environment, as I've already said. In order to make sure that this was okay, I went out and made a proof of concept film shot on an iPhone 15 Pro Max, iPhone 13 Pro Max. And from that, I used the, zooming out. So the standard lens on that, the one-time lens on an iPhone is equivalent to about 23 millimeters, 24 millimeters. Okay. So I knew that a 16 millimeter lens on a EV10 was going to give me about a 24 millimeter frame. So that would be a good proxy to see what kind of shots it would give me, what kind of frame. And in that proof of concept film, it turned out that that's a pretty good focal length for the kind of thing that I want to do. I kind of wish it was a bit wider, but it's wide enough, and that's the important thing. So for a lens, I decided pretty quickly upon the Sigma 16 millimeter 1.4. There's some great videos out there about this lens and comparing it to other Sigma lenses, which one of which I also bought, which I'll tell you about in a sec, and equivalents from other brands. Nothing was really going to convince me to not buy the Sigma, and mainly because so many people are using EV10s with the Sigma 16mm that it means that it's highly probable you're going to be able to pick up a combination of the E10 and the Sigma 16mm secondhand at a pretty good price, because so many people have bought it in the past, and they pass them on. So I managed to get the E10 and the Sigma 16mm lens for 925 Australian dollars, which is $587.26, just off the top of my head, in US dollars. Although, might be more now. US dollar seems to be trumping. It was an interesting fact that the guy who I bought it from was selling the E10 and Sigma in order to buy a DJI Pocket 3. Because he had made this decision, tried it out, and discovered it wasn't for him. And he was going back down that route. So maybe that's you, and you really need to seriously think about that. And that brings us to other lenses. So another thing I need for the signocism films is to shoot close-ups of street signs. So I wanted to do that with a really attractive bokeh and that lovely bird background. And really 3 lenses stood out for doing that. But one emerged as the most likely, and that was the Sigma 56 1.4. There was also the Viltrox 56 1.7 and the TT Artisan 56 1.8. Now, on an APS camera, that focal length is going to give me a fair bit of zoom. So that's going to be equivalent to 84 millimeter on a full frame camera, which is a fair zoom. And it's going to flatten the image. And with the very wide aperture, it's going to allow me to get that beautiful bokeh. And really that choice between those 3 lenses came down to image quality. And the Sigma just seemed to have the other ones beaten. Plus having a bit more, bit slightly wider aperture that was just going to give me that extra bit of bokeh. And also the comparison, there's some good comparison videos out there. The nature of the bokeh was slightly better. Let's just say better. Now I couldn't find one of these at a reasonable price secondhand from privately, so I had to buy it from a camera store. But I did get it secondhand and fairly heavily discounted, much more, very heavily discounted, even on the most heavily discounted new one. So for the Sigma 56 1.4, I got that for 381 Australian dollars, which is 241 and let's just see, 88 cents USD. All right, now let's talk about the gimbal. There's two types of camera rigs, really, a handheld rig and for run and gun filmmaking, and gimbal based rigs. And of course they're interchangeable, but you sort of need to set yourself up to do one or the other if you're on a limited budget. And there's some great videos by the Thomas J. McClure about how to set up a run and gun style rig using a Sony EV10. He does these budgets, so a $250 rig and then a $500 rig. So in addition to the camera and the lens, you've got the other components of that. And his videos are fantastic about it. So go and check those out if that's what you want. But with the Sony 16mm on the E10, I'm going to need stabilization. The run and gun rig isn't going to provide it. So how am I going to get it? So I'm going to use a gimbal. Now I had some experience because that proof of concept film that I shot on a iPhone 13 Pro Max using a DJI Osmo Mobile 6 as a gimbal. And the experience was pretty good. Fiddly in some ways, but pretty darn good. So I thought a gimbal-based rig is really the way to go. And that experience was comfortable. Now, comfort is an important concept that people really don't discuss in the videos that I've been using for research. But a DJI RS3 Mini gimbal with the E10 and a lens and other stuff is going to come in around about 2 kilos. Doesn't sound like a lot, but if you're holding it for hours and you're trying to get smooth footage, you're going to get tired. You're going to get tired lifting it. So you want things to be as light as possible. So this really was a major consideration for me. So I'm also getting someone else to help me hold the camera. That's my wife, and she's going to get tired. She's going to get tired pretty quickly. I'm worried that this decision to go this mirrorless camera route is going to come back to haunt me because of that, because of the weight, just because of the weight. But I'm willing to give it a try for the creativity. And so far, just in initial experiments, it looks like things are going to be okay. And payload is a consideration for another reason. It's because the RS3 Mini has a max payload of 2 kilograms, whereas other gimbals, other DJI gimbals have much heavier, 3, I think, and 4 or 5. You really want to be carrying around a 4 or 5 kilo rig? I don't. And so that necessity to keep the weight down for comfort meant also that I could buy the cheaper gimbal. So I'm winning in 2 ways. So I went down the DJI store and tried out the other models, took a look at them, saw how strong they were and felt the weight. And for me, it was just overkill. So there was nothing about the RS3 Mini that really put me off. So I managed to get one of those secondhand, plus a case, for a total of 290 Australian dollars, which is, let me think, 184.07 US dollars. So I needed some accessories for the gimbal. There's some great videos about accessories for the RS3, and 2 of those really hit the mark with me. Some, like the Arco Swiss quick release and the small rig extension arm, I'll save for later, but they also really appeal to me. But for right now, what I need is a sling handle that'll give me more flexibility and control to carry the gimbal. So I can carry it down low, like a briefcase, or use it to stabilize like this. Here it is. In fact, I've got the thing here. That's a sling handle, so I can grab it like that, hold it low like that, or high, or whatever. It just gives you 2 hands on the gimbal with a lot more flexibility. That was great. I also bought the tripod extension. These things are made of metal. They're a little bit heavier than the one it comes with, but they're much, much more stable. So this is an expensive thing. It's an expensive rig. You don't want it falling over. Unfortunately, I had to buy both of those new. So they were a little bit expensive. The small rig sling handle went for $45 Australian, but that was on sale. And that's $28.57 US dollars. The extended grip, the tripod, was $69, which is pretty darn expensive, which is $43.80 US. Then I wanted a monitor. You know, Luke Forsyth's channel especially has been especially helpful. And one of Luke's videos is about 6 pieces of gear that he wishes he'd had from the beginning of his career. And one of those is a external monitor. So when he said that, I kind of sat up and thought about that, because the screens that are inbuilt in the E10, isn't very good, and you can't read it well in bright sunlight. And so in my initial experiments, from that I concluded that Luke was correct. So I went looking for a good external monitor. Now, unfortunately, the good ones are really expensive, quite expensive. So I looked at the affordable options, the cheaper options, and I tried to find one that seemed to offer the best bang for the buck and to give me what I really wanted, which was just a larger screen, and so I could see the focus peaking in the monitor and make sure that I had it where I wanted. Because as Luke says, in 4K shooting, it matters when your focus is off. So I set it on the Portkeys PT5-2. The cheapest price I could find was about $50 cheaper than any other place. It was $249 Australian dollars and 158 American dollars and 6 cents. The next thing I got was a matte box. There's a lot of talk about matte boxes, about whether or not they're necessary, but during that proof of concept film, I had some problems shooting into the sun, and I didn't want to have to deal with that. I didn't want to have to do a bush fix, by either holding a bit of cardboard over the lens. If I'm using manual focus, that's not going to work. I only have 2 arms. So I knew I'd be shooting into the sun. That was going to be unavoidable. And I knew that might be early in the morning and in the evening when the sun is low. So I really wanted a flexibility. The haze and lens flares and effects that you get from shooting into the sun can be creative and useful. But I want to be able to make the choice to do that rather than have that choice foisted upon me from the lack of gear that I've got, from the limitations of my equipment. So what I really wanted in a matte box was flexibility. Pretty quickly I set it on the small rig options. It came to the matte box mini versus the matte box light. Now I set it on the light because of features and price. It seemed to have all the features I want and the price. And also it's slightly lighter. But I wanted additional options for control. So I wanted to get the side flaps as well, so that I could control the haze and the lens flare in low light. I wouldn't need it very much, but when I did, I'd appreciate it. For instance, if you're shooting into the sun and the sun's low, for instance, so your side flaps are protecting the lens, and then you pan. Well, if you only have the side flaps on and not the top, you're going to pan into the sun. You're going to get the haze and the flare. So for flexibility, I want a top flag and the side flags as well. But I'm not going to use them very much, but I want them there in case, and I know I'm going to be in situations where I can use them. So I was all set to order the mini matte box mini light plus side flags when I noticed that the matte box mini Pro was selling for only a few dollars more. And the Pro version has a top flap with extendable side flaps and side flags on it. So I thought, bugger it, I'll get that. And the Mini has some threads which are good for mounting things, which I might use in the future, I might not. But it was good to have the option, again, to have a more versatile option rather than the Mini Lite. Now, it was disappointing when I went to try to get those secondhand. I couldn't find one that was as cheap as what I could get it new, so I got it new. So The Mini Matbox Pro cost $137.25 Australian, which is $87.13 US. Now, I want to add that there's quite a bit of debate about matte boxes and people saying that, have strong opinions about beginning filmmakers spending money on things they don't need. One bloke says just ditch the matte box and use the lens that came with the lens. Well, I tried that with the 16mm, Sigma 16mm on my E10 with active steady shot turned off, and I got a very pronounced vignette. So that was that. So for sound, I wanted a reliable mic for voiceover. So for other work I'd already purchased actually a DJI Mic Mini, and before I decided to go down the E10 option. So there's tons of online stuff about how good this mic is, so I'm using it now. Here it is. And my only real decision was whether or not to buy 2 transmitters or 1. It's good to have a failsafe, but I really wanted to save money, so I didn't buy that. And as I'll describe in a minute, it actually has turned out not to matter. But I don't think you need a charging case. If you just buy the one transmitter, the one receiver, it has little charging things come with that. You can just charge them separately. It's handy to have the case, just like earbuds, but I don't need it. I also wanted a lightning adapter that comes with it. You can buy from DJI so that you can record on your phone, just like I'm doing now. So this is going to the phone. That way you can use the hot shoe on your camera for other things. Otherwise, you can actually put that receiver into the hot shoe. For ambient sound, most people will buy a boom mic, and I could have bought one of those, but I thought if I want to use that cold shoe, the hot shoe, for something else, then the boom mic's taking it up. What if I want to put my transmitter on that instead? And I just thought for flexibility, I might try something a little bit different. So I went looking for other kinds of microphones, and I came across the Zoom range of sound recorders. And I thought, well, why not just try to pick up one of those pretty cheap and attach it via 3.5mm thread to my rig somehow, and see if I can take that. And that way I have a sound recorder that'll work off the camera. So if I'm walking around and I want to record some sound somewhere, I can. I don't need to turn my camera on to do that. So that seemed like a good idea. So I managed to pick one of those up for about $90. And lo and behold, it came in the box with a Rode lavalier mic, a few cables, and that Rode mic is now my failsafe option in case the DJI Mic Mini craps out. So the Mic Mini, there's the 1 transmitter, 1 receiver, and plus lightning connection. Cost me 164 Australian dollars. Had to buy a cable, a connector cable from the, one of those 5-pin USBs to the computer. That's another $8. Next thing was audio. Good sound design is really important. For the proof of concept film I made for Signocism, I tried out Epidemic Sound and it was fantastic. I have nothing but good things to say about it. It really worked really well. The search is really excellent. And I found some really good music to use and some great sound effects. I found everything I needed pretty easy. However, through Luke Forsyth's channel, you can get a discount using a code. And on audio, Luke has videos that are sponsored by audio, and he swears that he uses them. So I'm going to trust the guy that he does. But you can get an offer through there for 93 Australian dollars, which is like 57 US dollars for a year, which is practically half of what Epidemic Sound cost. So although I couldn't recommend Epidemic Sound enough, I'm actually going to subscribe to audio for a year and see how that goes. So then there's editing software. So I've been using iMovie for years, doing little things that I needed to do. and it has serious limitations that I find really deeply frustrating. So I fully intended to upgrade to Final Cut Pro. There's only 2 chances of me subscribing to Adobe for Premiere Pro, and those are Buckley's and none. And if you're an Australian, you might understand what that means. If you're not, you'll have to watch the second video I'm making for Signocism in order to find out. However, Final Cut Pro comes in at $499.99 Australian. Don't know what it is in American. I've lost my ability to calculate. But DaVinci Resolve has a free plan which has 90% of what the paid plan gives you. And my initial explorations have shown that DaVinci Resolve has got everything I need. So why would I want to pay 500 Australian dollars for something I can get basically for $0? And it has extra features that Final Cut Pro doesn't have, like a built-in audio editor and the color grading. I mean, I don't know what Final Cut Pro's color grading is like, but DaVinci Resolve gets a great raps. So that saved me $500. Okay, next I want to talk about filters. So as I'll be shooting a lot outdoors, a VND filter seems essential. However, I'm shooting a lot in the street, and there's a lot of reflections from cars and from shop windows. And so I need a polarizer as well, all the time, in order to deal with those. And one of the effects of a polarizer is to stop it down a couple of stops, so that I started to wonder whether or not I really needed a ND filter or a VND filter. And so I sought some advice from a store clerk, and he said to me, "Oh, you don't need the VND." Now, ChatGPT disagreed with him, but to save some cash, I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a try. Well, as you can see, the machine was correct. So I was shooting at 150 at 25 frames per second because I'm in a pale region. And if you want to open up that aperture and get it low like I do, or wide aperture, low number, you're going to need a VND. So I bought a Hoya circular polarizer, 67mm, $60 Australian. I bought the small rig magnetic VND, which is really good because you can take it off and adjust it. And it's not so fiddly to have to reach inside and fiddle around with it. You can take it off, adjust it, put it back on. For $91.90 Australian. Next is memory card. So my camera came with a 32 gig card, but that's not big enough. I bought a 128 gig, which will give you 2.5 hours or so, 4K. I bought the 200 megabits a second because the transfer speed's good, and higher speeds than that, the cards get much more expensive. So maybe I should have bought a 256 gig. I don't know. I think maybe 2.5 hours is probably enough. Might just fit this video in. So I bought the ScanDisk Extreme Pro 128 for 36 Australian dollars. And then I had to buy a micro SD card for the Zoom that I bought, and that cost $15.20. So 32 gig for that is like 35 hours worth of recording. So that's plenty. Batteries. The camera came with a stock Sony MP FW50 battery, as it should have, and a replacement Jupio MP FW50. Battery life is not great. You know, I'm getting maybe an hour or so, an hour and a bit with these batteries. So I was very happy to have that Jupio replacement. But I put that in, and I could not get that sucker out again. I had to lever it out with a screwdriver. It was, I don't know whether it's swollen, maybe it's faulty in some way, I don't know. But it doesn't fit properly into my E10, and I will never try another Jupio battery in there. So I went back online, and the same place I've been getting so much of this, of really great discounts, was DigiDirect, their online store and their store in Melbourne. And I got a replacement, a small rig, replacement MP FW50, two of those plus a charger for $36. So that's really good. I'm happy to report I don't need to lever them out with a screwdriver. I needed a battery for the Portkeys monitor, the PT5. Now, unfortunately, that wasn't available through my usual supplier, so I tried out another Australian supplier called Better Bat, which I think is really Chinese. I went for a size that would give me 4 or 5 hours of use, which already initially, the couple of weeks since I've been shooting with the camera since, it's too big. So the 750 is overkill, and I think it's 550 would be enough. And I'm thinking about actually going and getting one of the 550s because of the weight saving. So the Better Bat replacement for the Sony NP-F 750 was $66.98, which is still a fair chunk of money for a battery. Yeah, that one stings. The last thing I bought was an adapter, a pair of Coldshoe adapters to fit into the camera with a 3.5mm thread. So that means I can put it on the gimbal or on the camera and attach things to it like the zoom, I can screw that in, or other things that I might have. And that was cheap as $8.25 total. So the total after all of that came to $2,766.93, more than I really wanted, but less than I was prepared ultimately to spend. So especially by saving $500 on the Final Cut Pro by not buying that, it's come in at a reasonable cost. So in US dollars, let me tell you how much that is. So 2,766 Australian dollars, 93 cents is 1,000. What is it? Is $1,729.99 US. So in summary, I've had to make quite a few decisions that might come back on me like a racehorse micturating into a hurricane. But so be it. I've tried to make the best decisions I could with the limited knowledge I have, trying to balance image quality with portability, flexibility, and budget. And I've brought the entire thing in for a cost that hurts like hell, but is acceptable. So now we just got to get on with the work. So there you have it. If you're interested in graphic art, urban history, signs, semiotics, and other related stuff, and maybe you're interested in traveling to Melbourne, head over to Signocism, and eventually there'll be something there that you can look at. Otherwise, check back in here for updates on the rig. I'll be giving updates about how things have turned out, and obviously there'll be decisions I've made which have turned out to be really stupid. But, I've got to own them, and I'm an honest guy. I'll own my own decisions. And if you want to subscribe, just on that, I'm not going to be sending out videos every week. I'm not going to be a YouTuber like that. It's just pumping the internet full of hot air. It's going to be an occasional thing. Signocism will be an occasional thing, and so will this. But I just hope it's been useful in some way. If you can learn something from my experience, that's great. And if I can learn something from yours, let me know in the comments. Now remember one more thing. Remember that reality is engineered. It's the time of the signs.